The teen who was bullied for being smart would go on to create something the world couldn't ignore. They called him a freak for loving science more than sports, a social outcast whose brilliant mind became his prison. But while his tormentors were busy destroying his high school days, they never realized they were fueling the creation of something that would change humanity forever. This isn't just another success story. It's about how the world's cruelty created its own salvation. Alex wasn't like the other kids in Westbrook High. While his classmates obsessed over the latest TikTok trends, he was designing algorithms and devouring quantum physics textbooks. His mind moved at a different speed, processing patterns and possibilities that others couldn't even comprehend. Look at the freak with his science books again. They'd snicker in the hallways. Lunch meant sitting alone, his table an island of isolation in the cafeteria's social ocean. The worst came when Jason, the school's star quarterback, dumped Alex's backpack in the toilet, destroying months of research notes. Maybe now you'll learn nobody cares about your weird little projects. Jason laughed as Alex fought back tears, gathering soaked papers from the bathroom floor. But in the quiet of his bedroom, surrounded by circuit boards and coding manuals, Alex found freedom. His mind could roam without boundaries, connecting concepts that experts said were impossible to bridge. Where others saw separate problems, he saw a unified solution. His isolation had given him a perspective no one else had. The ability to see connections invisible to those trapped in conventional thinking. What his tormentors didn't realize was that they were creating the very conditions that would change the world forever. The moment everything changed came during Alex's junior year. His science teacher, Dr. Reeves, the only adult who seemed to recognize his potential, announced a national innovation competition. The prize, a full scholarship to MIT and seed funding for the winning project. As the class buzzed with excitement, Alex sat quietly in the back corner, his mind already racing with possibilities that no one else in the room could envision. This competition is looking for breakthrough thinking, Dr. Reeves explained, her eyes lingering on Alex for just a moment longer than the others. Something that challenges conventional wisdom and creates new pathways for scientific exploration. After class, she stopped him as he gathered his books. Alex, I think you should enter. Your mind works differently. That's not a weakness. It's your greatest strength. Alex's hands trembled as he read the competition brief that evening. This was his chance to prove everyone wrong, to transform his pain into purpose. The requirements were daunting. Create an innovation that bridges multiple scientific disciplines to solve a real-world problem. Most students would pick something safe, incremental, improvements to existing technologies or modest solutions to well-defined problems. But Alex saw something deeper. Late nights blurred into early mornings as he worked on his concept. An AI-driven system that could identify patterns across seemingly unrelated scientific disciplines. He called it convergence, a neural network that could analyze research papers from physics, biology, chemistry, and computer science, identifying hidden connections that human researchers might miss. If it worked, it could accelerate scientific discovery exponentially, finding solutions in one field that could be applied to problems in another. His parents worried about the dark circles forming under his eyes, the meals he skipped, the weekends spent hunched over his computer instead of experiencing normal teenage life. "This isn't healthy, Alex," his mother would say, placing a sandwich beside his keyboard that would often go untouched for hours. But they didn't try to stop him. They'd seen how the isolation at school had wounded him, and this project had ignited something they hadn't seen in years. Hope. The day Jason and his friends discovered Alex's competition entry, they cornered him behind the school gym during lunch period. The spring air was warm, but Alex felt cold dread wash over him as the group approached. "You actually think you're special enough to win?" Jason sneered, shoving Alex against the brick wall. His varsity jacket stretched across broad shoulders that had never known the weight of intellectual ambition. "Nobody from this school has ever even made it to the finals. What makes you think a freak like you has a chance?" The others laughed, a chorus of cruel agreement. One of them, Tyler, grabbed Alex's notebook and flipped through the pages of equations and diagrams. "Look at this garbage. It's like he's writing an alien language." He tossed the notebook to the ground, where it landed in a puddle, the ink beginning to bleed across pages representing weeks of work. "Maybe stick to stuff you're good at," Jason said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, wait, there isn't anything." That night, alone in his room with his salvaged, water-damaged notes, Alex felt something shift inside him. The humiliation burned, but instead of extinguishing his drive, it transformed into a cold, clear determination. Bruised but undeterred, he made a breakthrough around 2 a.m. The algorithm he'd been struggling with suddenly clicked into place. What if the reason nobody had solved this problem wasn't because it was impossible, but because they were approaching it from the wrong perspective? The outsider's view, his view, was exactly what was needed. Conventional thinking had created artificial boundaries between scientific disciplines, but nature didn't recognize those human categories. The same patterns repeated across scales and systems, from quantum particles to cosmic structures, from neural networks to social dynamics. Alex worked feverishly for the next 2 weeks, forgetting to eat, sleeping only when his body demanded it. His code evolved, becoming more elegant, more powerful. He tested it against published research, and convergence found connections that had taken human scientists decades to discover, and suggested dozens more that remained unexplored. When the finalists were announced 3 weeks later, Alex's name topped the list. The email arrived during chemistry class, and when his phone buzzed with the notification, he nearly dropped his beaker. Reading the message 3 times to make sure it wasn't a mistake, a small, involuntary smile broke across his face. The first genuine one in months. Word spread quickly through Westbrook High. The same hallways that had once echoed with mockery now buzzed with disbelief. Teachers who had overlooked him suddenly remembered his name. The outcast was suddenly the school's reluctant celebrity, though Alex found the sudden attention more uncomfortable than validating. The principal announced his achievement over the intercom, calling him an example of Westbrook excellence. A description so at odds with his actual experience that Alex had to suppress a bitter laugh. Even Jason's attitude shifted, though not toward genuine respect. "I always knew you were smart," he claimed, as if the years of torment had been some form of motivation rather than cruelty. "When you're famous, remember who pushed you to be better." Dr. Reeves was the only one who understood. "They'll try to claim part of your success now," she told him after congratulating him privately. "Don't let them rewrite history, but don't let bitterness consume you either. Your mind is too valuable for that." As he packed his project for the national finals in Boston, carefully securing his laptop and backup drives, Alex realized something profound. The isolation that had once been his prison had become his greatest advantage. While others thought in straight lines, constrained by convention and peer pressure, his mind had been free to explore the uncharted spaces between disciplines. The night before leaving for Boston, he stood at his bedroom window, looking up at the stars. The same universe that seemed so vast and indifferent had also created the human mind, his mind, capable of finding patterns in chaos. Perhaps being different wasn't a curse after all, but the universe's way of ensuring that someone would see what everyone else had missed. Boston in autumn was nothing like Westbrook. As Alex stepped off the train at South Station, the city enveloped him in a symphony of sounds, smells, and colors that momentarily overwhelmed his senses. University students hurried past with purposeful strides. Professionals in tailored suits navigated the crowds with practiced indifference. And tourists stood bewildered at street corners, maps and phones in hand. The crisp October air carried hints of coffee from nearby cafes and the faint saltiness of the harbor. His father had offered to drive him, but Alex had insisted on making the journey alone. This was his moment, his transition from the confines of Westbrook to something larger. The train ride had given him time to mentally prepare, reviewing his presentation while watching the New England landscape transform from suburban sprawl to urban density. His hotel room, paid for by the competition organizers, felt impossibly luxurious. A king-sized bed all to himself, a desk that didn't wobble, and a view of the Charles River that made his heart skip. The bathroom had those tiny bottles of shampoo his mother always collected from their rare family vacations. And the television was at least twice the size of the outdated model in his bedroom. For the first time in years, Alex felt the weight of Westbrook High lift from his shoulders. Here, nobody knew him as the weird kid who sat alone at lunch. Here, his mind might finally be judged on its merits. After unpacking his meager belongings, 3 carefully folded button-down shirts his mother had insisted on ironing, his 1 pair of good pants, and the backup drives containing multiple copies of Convergence, Alex stood at the window, watching boats navigate the river. The enormity of what lay ahead settled over him. Tomorrow, he would present his work to some of the brightest scientific minds in the country. The thought sent a shiver of both terror and exhilaration down his spine. The competition venue was MIT's Ray and Maria Stata Center, a building that looked as though it defied the laws of physics, with tilting walls and geometric shapes that shouldn't have stood but somehow did. Designed by famed architect Frank Gehry, its unconventional angles and seemingly random arrangement of forms made traditional buildings appear timid by comparison. It seemed fitting that his algorithm, which challenged scientific conventions, would be presented in a place that challenged architectural ones. Quite something, isn't it? Said a voice beside him as he stood gaping at the structure. Alex turned to find a girl about his age, with close-cropped dark hair and keen eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She wore a NASA t-shirt under an open flannel shirt and a lanyard identifying her as another competitor. A small robot pin adorned her backpack strap, alongside several buttons covered with mathematical equations. "I'm May," she said, extending her hand. "Quantum computing entry from California, Berkeley High School, though everyone assumes I mean the university when I say that." "Alex," he replied, shaking her hand awkwardly, conscious of his palm's clamminess. "AI pattern recognition from Massachusetts." "Ah, so you're the hometown hero," she smiled. "Though I'm guessing from your expression that MIT isn't exactly your backyard." "I'm from Westbrook," he admitted. "About an hour away, but it might as well be another planet." "Well, alien," May grinned. "Let's go register before the line gets too long. I hear they have actual scientists checking us in, not just volunteers. Might be a good chance to make a first impression." As they walked toward the entrance, May chatted easily about her journey from California, the red-eye flight that had left her running on caffeine and adrenaline, and her project, a quantum algorithm that could theoretically solve certain optimization problems exponentially faster than classical methods. Alex found himself relaxing slightly in her presence. Unlike his classmates at Westbrook, she didn't seem to find his intelligence threatening or his social awkwardness worthy of ridicule. Inside, the competition area buzzed with activity. 40 finalists from across the country were setting up displays, calibrating equipment, and rehearsing presentations. The diversity of projects was staggering. Everything from bioengineered microbes that could clean oil spills to quantum encryption algorithms that promised unbreakable security. A team from Texas had constructed a miniature fusion reactor that glowed with an eerie blue light, while a girl from Minnesota demonstrated a neural interface that allowed her to control a robotic arm with her thoughts. The air hummed with conversations about quantum entanglement, CRISPR gene editing, and neural network architectures, discussions that would have earned blank stares or mockery at Westbrook, but here were as common as debates about movie sequels or sports teams elsewhere. For perhaps the first time in his life, Alex felt the intoxicating sensation of being among his intellectual peers. As Alex set up his laptop and connected it to the provided monitor, he noticed the judges making their first rounds. Distinguished professors, industry leaders, and even a Nobel laureate moved from station to station, asking questions and taking notes. Dr. Elias Rothstein, whose groundbreaking work in computational biology had revolutionized drug discovery, scrutinized a project 3 booths away, his bushy white eyebrows furrowed in concentration. Dr. Helena Wu, whose papers on biophysics Alex had read obsessively, smiled encouragingly at a nervous-looking contestant. His throat tightened at the thought of explaining his work to people whose books he'd studied, whose papers he'd devoured late into the night. "Don't worry," May said, noticing his anxiety from her adjacent booth. "They're actually nice. Well, except for Rothstein. He's brilliant, but hasn't smiled since the Cold War ended. I met him at a conference last year. He told me my question was less stupid than most, and I nearly fainted from what passes as praise in his world." A tall boy setting up across from them leaned over. "I heard Rothstein made someone cry during the preliminary judging last year. Just flat out told them their fundamental premise was flawed and they'd wasted months of work." "That's Carter," May whispered to Alex. "Materials science prodigy from Georgia Tech's early enrollment program. Brilliant, but enjoys freaking people out." "Thanks for the introduction, May," Carter said with a mock bow. "And for the record, I don't enjoy freaking people out. I just believe in psychological preparation for high-stress situations." He turned to Alex. "So, what's your thing, new guy?" Before Alex could answer, an announcement came over the speakers asking all contestants to complete their setup within the next 15 minutes. The preliminary judging would begin shortly. The next hours passed in a blur of explanations, demonstrations, and increasingly technical questions. Alex explained convergence dozens of times, watching as confusion on judges' faces transformed into curiosity, and then, occasionally, into something approaching awe. His algorithm identified a potential application of a cellular repair mechanism in plants that could theoretically be adapted to improve solar panel efficiency. A connection no human researcher had published. "You're saying your system discovered this independently?" asked Dr. Helena Wu, a biophysicist whose work Alex had cited in his research. "Yes," Alex replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "It analyzed pattern similarities between photosynthetic energy transfer and semiconductor electron behavior, then suggested this adaptation based on evolutionary optimization principles." Dr. Wu studied him for a long moment, her intelligent eyes narrowing slightly. "Most people spend decades becoming experts in one narrow field. Your approach suggests that might be exactly the wrong strategy for certain types of innovation." She made a note on her tablet. "Fascinating." When Dr. Rothstein approached his booth, Alex felt his mouth go dry. The renowned scientist stood silently for nearly a full minute, reading through Alex's presentation materials without expression. "Your training data," he finally said, his voice gravelly from decades of academic arguments. "How did you account for publication bias in the scientific literature? Positive results are published more frequently than negative ones." It was a question Alex had anticipated. Convergence incorporates a bias correction algorithm that estimates the probability of unpublished negative results based on statistical patterns in research methodology. It essentially tries to infer what should exist in the literature, but doesn't. Rothstein's eyebrows rose slightly, the equivalent of a standing ovation from anyone else. "Show me," he said, gesturing to the computer. For the next 20 minutes, Alex walked the scientist through the inner workings of his algorithm, explaining the mathematical models and the neural network architecture that allowed it to identify cross-disciplinary patterns. By the end, Rothstein was asking questions that pushed Alex to the very limits of his understanding. "You've built something interesting here, young man," Rothstein said finally. "Not perfect, but interesting. The question is whether you understand its implications." He fixed Alex with an intense gaze. Tools like this could accelerate scientific discovery, yes, but they could also concentrate power in the hands of whoever controls them. Have you considered the ethical dimensions? The question caught Alex off guard. He had been so focused on making convergence work that he hadn't fully explored its potential consequences. I believe knowledge itself is neutral," he began hesitantly. "But you're right that tools to discover it faster could be misused. That's why I've designed convergence with transparency in mind. All its reasoning processes can be audited, and I plan to make the core algorithm open source." Rothstein nodded slowly. "A reasonable start. But remember this: every major scientific advancement has changed the world in ways its creators never anticipated. Some for better, some for worse." With that cryptic statement, he moved on to the next booth. By mid-afternoon, Alex was exhausted but exhilarated. The judges had been challenging but fair, pushing him to articulate aspects of his work he had previously taken for granted. During a brief break, May appeared at his side with 2 paper cups of coffee. "You look like you need this," she said, handing him one. "I saw Rothstein spend 20 minutes at your booth. You must have impressed him. He usually dismisses most projects in under 5. "Thanks," Alex said gratefully, taking a sip of the bitter coffee. "How's your quantum algorithm being received?" May shrugged, but couldn't hide a small smile. "Pretty well, I think. Though Carter keeps trying to convince the judges that his self-assembling nanomaterials make quantum computing obsolete." They watched as Carter enthusiastically explained his project to a group of judges, his hands moving animatedly as he described molecular structures. "He's actually not as arrogant as he seems," May said. "Just passionate. We all are, I guess. You don't get to this level without being a little obsessed." Alex nodded, recognizing the truth in her words. His own obsession with convergence had consumed him for months, crowding out almost everything else in his life. Was that dedication or imbalance? He wasn't sure. By evening, the field had been narrowed to 10 finalists, who would present on the main stage the following day. When Alex's name was announced, he felt a curious sense of calm. This wasn't like school, where success made him more of a target. Here, excellence was the expected standard. May had also made the cut, as had Carter and 7 others representing the best young scientific minds in the country. That night, the remaining contestants were invited to a dinner with the judges and sponsors. The event was held in a glass-walled room overlooking the Boston skyline, now twinkling with lights as dusk settled over the city. Alex, wearing his least wrinkled button-down shirt and feeling distinctly underdressed, found himself seated between May and an investment banker whose firm was providing part of the prize money. "So what drives you, Alex?" the banker asked between bites of salmon. "What problem are you really trying to solve with this technology?" The question caught him off guard. He'd been so focused on making the algorithm work that he hadn't fully articulated its purpose beyond advancing scientific discovery. "I think," he began slowly, pushing a piece of asparagus around his plate. "I think we've created artificial barriers between fields of knowledge. Nature doesn't categorize itself the way we do in academic departments. The same patterns repeat across scales and systems, but we miss them because we're too specialized, too siloed in our thinking." He paused, surprised by his own eloquence. Convergence is about removing those barriers, letting us see connections that have always been there, waiting to be discovered. The banker nodded thoughtfully. "Not a bad investment pitch. Though I notice you said we create barriers, not they. That's unusual for someone your age." Alex considered this. "Maybe because I've always been on the outside looking in. When you're not part of any group, you start to see how arbitrary the boundaries between them really are." "Interesting perspective," the banker said, making a note in his phone. "My firm is always looking for people who think differently. Keep in touch after the competition, regardless of the outcome." He handed Alex a business card that felt impossibly heavy and important. Across the table, Dr. Wu was engaged in an animated discussion with May about quantum decoherence, while Carter appeared to be charming a representative from NASA with his vision for materials that could withstand the radiation of deep space. The conversations around him flowed from cutting-edge science to philosophical implications to practical applications, all with an underlying current of excitement about the future these young minds were helping to shape. For a moment, Alex felt a pang of something like homesickness. Not for Westbrook, but for a place he had never been. A community where his mind was not just accepted, but valued. Where curiosity was currency and understanding was the shared goal. Perhaps, he thought, that place could exist beyond this competition. Later, as he lay in his hotel bed staring at the ceiling, Alex's phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we're already so proud of you." Attached was a photo of his parents standing in front of a hastily made "Go Alex" sign in their living room. His father, normally reserved with his emotions, was giving a thumbs up with a rare, unguarded smile. For the first time since arriving in Boston, Alex felt tears prick at his eyes. He'd been so focused on proving his worth to those who had rejected him that he'd almost forgotten those who had always believed in him. His parents, who didn't understand his work, but understood him. Dr. Reeves, who had seen potential when others saw only oddity. Tomorrow would determine whether convergence would change the world, but in some ways, it already had changed his. Sleep eluded him as his mind raced through the day's events and tomorrow's possibilities. What if he froze during his presentation? What if someone asked a question he couldn't answer? What if convergence wasn't as revolutionary as he believed? The doubts that had been held at bay by the day's adrenaline now crept in with the night's silence. Around midnight, he gave up on sleep and opened his laptop, making small refinements to his presentation slides. A text message appeared from an unknown number. "Can't sleep either. Come to the hotel lobby. May." Curious, Alex pulled on jeans and a sweatshirt and took the elevator down. He found May sitting cross-legged on a couch in the deserted lobby, her laptop balanced on her knees, code reflecting in her glasses. "Thought you might be up," she said without looking up. Pre-competition insomnia is practically a scientific law. "How did you get my number?" Alex asked, sitting down across from her. "Carter," she replied. "Who got it from the event coordinator when he was flirting with her earlier? He's networking on all fronts." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, each working on their presentations. There was something calming about having company, without the pressure of conversation. "Do you ever wonder," May said suddenly, "what happens after tomorrow? Win or lose, we go back to our regular lives. Back to being the weird smart kid in places that don't know what to do with us." Alex looked up from his laptop. "I've been thinking about that too. Today felt different. Because here being exceptional is normal." May nodded. "But maybe that's the point. Maybe we're supposed to go back and create more spaces like this, not just hide in them when we find them." Her words resonated with something Alex had been feeling but couldn't articulate. Convergence wasn't just about connecting scientific disciplines. It was about his own desire to find connections in a world that often left him feeling isolated. "Carter and I were talking about starting an online community," May continued. "A place for people like us to collaborate across distances, share ideas, get feedback, work on problems together. You should join when you're ready." The invitation, casual as it was, felt significant. An acknowledgement that whatever happened tomorrow, these connections might outlast the competition itself. As he drifted toward sleep much later, Alex realized something else. He hadn't thought about Jason or Westbrook High all day. The people who had defined his existence through their rejection now seemed smaller, less important in the context of what he had found here. Perhaps that too was a kind of victory. Tomorrow would bring judgment, victory for one, and disappointment for 9 others. But tonight had already brought something Alex hadn't expected to find in Boston. A glimpse of belonging. Whatever the results, he wouldn't be returning to Westbrook quite the same person who had left it. The MIT auditorium hummed with anticipation as the final day of the competition began. Sunlight streamed through high windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air above the audience. A mix of judges, industry representatives, media, and the curious public who had secured tickets to witness what was being billed as a showcase of tomorrow's scientific pioneers. Alex sat in the front row alongside the other finalists, his presentation notes clutched in slightly trembling hands. On stage, the competition director, a former NASA engineer with a reputation for discovering young talent, welcomed the audience and explained the format. Each finalist would have 15 minutes to present, followed by 5 minutes of questions from the judges. By afternoon, a winner would be announced. The order of presentations was determined by random selection, the director explained. First up, we have Alex Chen from Westbrook High School in Massachusetts. Alex felt his heart skip. Going first hadn't been part of his plan. He had hoped to watch a few others, calibrate his approach based on the judges' reactions. Now he would be setting the bar rather than responding to it. "Good luck," May whispered as he stood. "Just breathe." The walk to the stage felt impossibly long. Alex was acutely aware of every eye following him, every subtle shift in the room's energy as people assessed this unremarkable-looking teenager about to make remarkable claims. He connected his laptop to the projector, and the Convergence logo appeared on the massive screen behind him, a stylized network of interconnected nodes that formed a greater whole. For a terrifying moment, as he faced the sea of expectant faces, Alex felt his mind go blank. The carefully rehearsed opening vanished, leaving only the thundering of his pulse in his ears. He caught sight of Dr. Reeves, who had surprised him by traveling to Boston to support him, sitting midway back. She gave him an encouraging nod. "Science," Alex began, his voice initially soft before finding its strength, "has become a victim of its own success. As our knowledge has expanded, we've been forced to specialize into increasingly narrow fields. Physicists rarely talk to biologists. Computer scientists and chemists attend different conferences and publish in different journals. But nature doesn't recognize these human categories." He clicked to his first slide, showing a split image. On one side, the branching pattern of neurons in the brain. On the other, the cosmic web of galaxy superclusters. The same patterns repeat across scales and disciplines. From the quantum to the cosmic, from the biological to the digital. What if we could create an intelligence capable of seeing these connections, not replacing human scientists, but augmenting them, helping them see beyond the artificial boundaries of their specializations? As he warmed to his subject, Alex's nervousness receded. This was his element. Not social interaction or school, politics, but ideas. Big, complex, world-changing ideas. He explained how convergence worked, its neural architecture inspired by the human brain, but designed to overcome human cognitive limitations. He demonstrated how it had identified cross-disciplinary applications that had eluded human researchers. To test convergence's capabilities, I gave it a challenge. Identify potential solutions for improving solar cell efficiency by looking for analogous processes in biological systems. Within hours, it had found this. He displayed a diagram showing how a particular protein complex in photosynthetic bacteria efficiently transferred energy with minimal loss, alongside a proposed modification to traditional solar cell design based on the same principle. Preliminary simulations suggest this biomimetic approach could improve efficiency by up to 32% while using materials that are abundant and non-toxic. But this is just one example. Convergence has identified hundreds of potential cross-disciplinary innovations, from drug delivery systems inspired by viral mechanisms to urban planning principles derived from forest ecosystems. Alex glanced at the timer. 3 minutes remaining. He moved to his conclusion, the part he had rehearsed most carefully. We stand at a crossroads in human knowledge. We can continue to specialize, to silo our understanding into increasingly isolated domains. Or we can find new ways to synthesize what we already know, to see the connections that have always existed but remained hidden from view. Convergence isn't just an algorithm. It's a new approach to science itself. An approach that recognizes that the most profound discoveries often happen not within disciplines, but between them. He took a deep breath, meeting the eyes of the judges directly for the first time. "Thank you for your consideration." The applause that followed felt surreal, as if happening to someone else. Alex was vaguely aware of returning to his seat, of May squeezing his arm in silent congratulation, of Carter giving him a respectful nod. But mostly, he felt a profound sense of relief. Whatever happened next, he had done justice to his idea. He had made convergence understood. The questions from the judges were incisive but fair. Dr. Wusu asked about potential applications in medical research. Dr. Rothstein probed the limitations of the algorithm's pattern-matching capabilities. A representative from Google inquired about computational requirements for scaling the system. Alex answered each question thoughtfully, neither overselling convergence's capabilities nor understating its potential. As the day progressed and other finalists presented their projects, May's quantum algorithm that could factor large numbers exponentially faster than classical methods. Carter's self-assembling nanomaterials that could repair themselves when damaged. A girl from Florida who had developed a new approach to carbon capture inspired by coral reefs. Alex found himself genuinely impressed by the creativity and rigor of his peers. This wasn't like the science fairs he'd participated in at school, where his projects had always seemed out of place among the baking soda volcanoes and simple circuit demonstrations. Here, every presentation pushed the boundaries of what seemed possible. During the lunch break, as the finalists gathered in a side room provided with sandwiches and drinks, the conversation flowed easily between topics that would have earned blank stares at Westbrook High. Carter was arguing passionately that materials science would define the next century of innovation, while May countered that quantum computing would render many current technological limitations. During the lunch break, as the finalists gathered in a side room provided with sandwiches and drinks, the conversation flowed easily between topics that would have earned blank stares at Westbrook High. Carter was arguing passionately that materials science would define the next century of innovation, while May countered that quantum computing would render many current technological limitations irrelevant. The bottleneck isn't computational power, Carter insisted, gesturing with half a sandwich. It's the physical constraints of the materials we're working with. My self-assembling carbon structures could revolutionize everything from medicine to aerospace. But quantum supremacy changes the game entirely, May replied. Problems that would take classical computers millennia to solve become tractable in minutes. That's not incremental, it's transformative. Alex listened, content for once to absorb rather than contribute. There was something deeply satisfying about witnessing this clash of ideas without the usual social undercurrents that made Westbrook so exhausting. No one here was trying to establish dominance or mock others for their enthusiasm. The competition existed, certainly, but it was secondary to the shared passion for discovery. What do you think, Alex? The question came from Elena, the carbon capture specialist from Florida. Will convergence change how we approach these problems? All eyes turned to him, but for once, the attention didn't make him want to disappear. I think we need all of it, he said after a moment. Quantum computing gives us processing power. New materials give us implementation pathways. But we also need new ways to connect existing knowledge, to see patterns across domains. He paused, considering. Maybe the next big breakthroughs won't come from any single field, but from the intersections between them. Quantum-enhanced algorithms applied to materials science problems, identified by systems like convergence, implemented with carbon nanostructures. The conversation exploded into excited crosstalk, with finalists building on each other's ideas, challenging assumptions, finding unexpected connections. For perhaps the first time in his life, Alex felt his mind truly engaged with others, not isolated by its differences, but amplified by the collision with equally powerful intellects moving in different directions. When they returned to the auditorium for the afternoon session, Alex found himself hoping that, regardless of the competition's outcome, these connections wouldn't end today. Something valuable had been catalyzed in that room, something that transcended the competitive framework that had brought them together. The remaining presentations proceeded, each impressive in its own right. By the time the last finalist concluded, the judges had a formidable task ahead of them. The director announced that they would deliberate for 30 minutes before announcing their decision. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Reeves asked, finding Alex in the lobby where the finalists and audience mingled during the break. "Strangely calm," he admitted. "I did my best. The rest is out of my control." She smiled. That's wisdom beyond your years. But between us, you were extraordinary up there. Whatever happens next, you should be proud. Alex nodded, surprised to find that he genuinely was proud, not just of Convergence, but of himself. The algorithm was impressive, yes, but he had also overcome his social anxiety to present it effectively, had answered challenging questions with clarity and confidence, had connected with peers who understood the value of what he was trying to accomplish. These were victories, regardless of the judge's decision. When the audience was called back into the auditorium, Alex found himself sitting between May and Carter, the three of them exchanging nervous smiles as the judges filed onto the stage. Dr. Rothstein looked as stern as ever, but there was something almost like satisfaction in his expression as he surveyed the finalists. The competition director approached the podium. Before we announce our decision, I want to emphasize what an extraordinary group of young scientists we've had the privilege to evaluate. Every project presented today represents innovation that would be remarkable from researchers at any age. You are all exceptional. Alex felt May's hand slip into his, squeezing tightly. On his other side, Carter had gone completely still, his usual animation replaced by intense focus. The judges were particularly impressed by three projects that demonstrated not only technical excellence, but transformative potential. The director continued. Our third-place winner, receiving a $25,000 research grant and internship opportunity with NASA, is Elena Gonzalez for her biomimetic carbon capture system. Applause filled the auditorium as Elena made her way to the stage, beaming. Alex clapped sincerely, thinking of how her approach to environmental engineering had drawn inspiration from coral polyps' ability to extract calcium carbonate from seawater. Exactly the kind of cross-disciplinary thinking that Convergence was designed to facilitate. Our second-place winner, receiving a $50,000 research grant and summer fellowship at CERN, is May Wong for her quantum factorization algorithm. May gasped, then turned to Alex with wide eyes before making her way to the stage. Her presentation had been brilliant, demonstrating how her approach could potentially break current encryption standards while simultaneously suggesting new quantum-resistant alternatives. Alex's heart pounded as the director paused dramatically. Only two finalists remained as serious contenders for first place, himself and Carter. He glanced at the materials science prodigy, who gave him a tight nod of acknowledgement. Whatever happened next, they both knew they had pushed each other to be better. And our first-place winner, receiving a full scholarship to MIT and $100,000 in research funding, is... The pause seemed to stretch into infinity. The auditorium so quiet, Alex could hear the soft hum of the ventilation system. Alex Chen for Convergence, a cross-disciplinary pattern recognition system. The world seemed to slow down. Alex was vaguely aware of the audience erupting in applause, of Carter clapping him on the back with genuine congratulations, of Dr. Reeves standing and cheering. But mostly he felt a profound sense of vindication washing over him in waves. Not against Westbrook or Jason or anyone who had doubted him. They seemed suddenly small and distant. But against the doubt that had lived inside himself. The voice that had whispered he was too different, too awkward, too obsessive to ever truly belong or succeed. As he made his way to the stage, legs moving automatically while his mind struggled to process what was happening, Alex caught sight of his parents in the audience. They had come after all, probably driving through the night to surprise him. His father was recording everything on his phone while his mother wiped tears from her eyes. They had always believed in him, even when they didn't understand him. "Congratulations, Alex," the director said, shaking his hand and presenting him with an oversized check and certificate of scholarship. The judges were particularly impressed by Convergence's potential to accelerate scientific discovery across multiple domains. Dr. Rothstein stepped forward, his expression as serious as ever. Your algorithm challenges fundamental assumptions about how we organize and advance scientific knowledge, he said, his gravelly voice carrying through the auditorium. That's rare, especially from someone so young. Use this opportunity wisely. As Alex faced the audience, certificate in hand, he was asked to say a few words. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm him. He hadn't prepared for this. But then he saw May and Elena standing nearby, Carter in the front row, his parents and Dr. Reeves beaming with pride. And he knew what he needed to say. "Thank you for this incredible honor," he began. Convergence started as a solution to a problem I experienced personally. The isolation that comes from specialization, from seeing connections others miss. But what I've learned through this competition is that I'm not alone in wanting to bridge these gaps. He gestured toward his fellow finalists. Every project presented today represents a form of convergence, bringing together ideas from different domains to create something new. Elena's carbon capture system applies biological principles to environmental engineering. May's quantum algorithm connects abstract mathematics to practical cryptography. Carter's nanomaterials bridge molecular science and structural engineering. Alex paused, finding unexpected confidence in articulating this realization. Maybe that's the real lesson here. The future of science isn't just about individual breakthroughs in isolated fields. It's about creating systems and communities that help us see across boundaries. Whether those systems are algorithms like Convergence, or competitions like this one that bring diverse minds together. The applause that followed felt like affirmation not just of his project, but of this vision for a more connected approach to knowledge itself. As he returned to his seat, Alex knew that winning was just the beginning. The real work and the real opportunity lay ahead. The formal ceremony concluded with photographs and interviews, with representatives from tech companies and research institutions circulating among the finalists like talent scouts at a sporting event. Alex found himself exchanging contact information with people whose research he had studied, whose companies were reshaping the technological landscape. "So, MIT," May said, finding him during the reception that followed. "That's practically next door to Harvard. I got early admission there last week. Didn't want to mention it before the competition." "You're coming east for college?" Alex asked, surprised and pleased. She nodded. "Quantum Information Science program. And it looks like Elena is headed to MIT for environmental engineering. Carter got into Stanford, but he's reconsidering after seeing the facilities here." "So we might all end up in the same place?" Alex said, the possibility filling him with unexpected warmth. "Different schools, same ecosystem," May corrected with a smile. "Perfect for a little convergence of our own." As the evening wound down and the auditorium emptied, Alex found himself standing with his parents and Dr. Reeves, the reality of his win still sinking in. "I always knew you had it in you," his father said, uncharacteristically emotional. Always. His mother simply hugged him, words unnecessary between them. She had been his first advocate, his constant support through years of parent-teacher conferences where his differences were framed as deficits rather than strengths. Dr. Reeves looked at him with quiet pride. "So, what's next for Convergence? And for you?" It was a good question, one that would require careful consideration. The scholarship solved the immediate question of college, but the research funding opened possibilities he had barely allowed himself to imagine. Could Convergence be scaled up, made more accessible to researchers worldwide? Could it be applied to specific grand challenges, climate change, disease, energy? And what about the ethical questions Dr. Rothstein had raised about who would control such a powerful tool? I'm not entirely sure yet, Alex admitted. But I think it involves collaboration. Convergence works by finding connections between different domains of knowledge. Maybe I need to do the same thing, connect with people who bring different perspectives, different expertise. Dr. Reeves nodded approvingly. That sounds like wisdom to me, and perhaps a bit of personal growth as well. Alex smiled, recognizing the truth in her observation. The isolated, defensive student she had first encountered, the one who had retreated into his own mind as protection against a world that didn't understand him, was already evolving into someone different. Someone who could still dive deep into complex problems, but was learning to surface and share what he discovered. As they walked out into the Boston evening, the city lights reflecting on the Charles River, Alex felt a sense of possibility expanding around him like ripples on water. Westbrook High seemed distant now, not just in miles, but in significance. The narrow hallways where he had felt trapped, the cafeteria where he had sat alone, the classrooms where his differences had made him a target. All of it receded as new pathways opened before him. Tomorrow would bring practical considerations, logistics of the scholarship, details of the research funding, preparations for the transition to MIT. But tonight was for savoring this moment of transformation, this convergence of past struggle and future potential. Ready to head back to the hotel? His father asked. Alex looked out at the river, at the MIT campus where he would soon belong, at the city that suddenly felt full of possibility. Actually, I thought we might get dinner with some of the other finalists and their families. May mentioned a place near here that's supposed to be good. His parents exchanged surprised but pleased glances. This suggestion of social initiative was perhaps as unexpected as the competition win itself. That sounds wonderful, his mother said. As they walked toward the restaurant, Alex's phone buzzed with a message from May. Bringing Elena and Carter. Also just got an email from Dr. Wu asking if I'd be interested in working in her quantum lab next summer. This day keeps getting better. Alex smiled, typing back his congratulations. The competition had ended, but something else was just beginning. A network of connections that extended beyond algorithms and into the human realm. For someone who had spent so much of his life feeling isolated by his differences, this new form of convergence might prove to be his most important discovery yet. The return to Westbrook felt like stepping into a familiar room where all the furniture had been subtly rearranged. Everything looked the same, the faded colonial houses lining Main Street, the town square with its weathered gazebo, the high school's brick facade. But Alex's perception had shifted, rendering the once oppressive landscape strangely diminished. His parents had suggested he take a few days off school to decompress after the competition, but Alex had declined. The longer he stayed away, the more dramatic his eventual return would seem. Better to slip back into the routine quietly, he thought, than to make his re-entry an event. That plan evaporated the moment he stepped through Westbrook High's front doors on Monday morning. The main hallway fell silent as heads turned in his direction, conversations pausing mid-sentence. Principal Donovan, who had barely acknowledged Alex's existence before the competition, materialized beside him with an outstretched hand. Alex, welcome back, champion. We're all so proud of your achievement. His voice boomed down the corridor, ensuring everyone heard. I've scheduled a special assembly this afternoon to recognize your accomplishment. Alex felt his chest tighten with anxiety. That's really not necessary, Mr. Donovan. Nonsense. It's not every day a Westbrook student brings such distinction to our school. The local paper wants photos, and the superintendent is coming. It's quite an opportunity for—" He caught himself. "For the school to celebrate your success." As the principal continued outlining the planned festivities, Alex spotted Jason and his friends watching from down the hall, their expressions unreadable. The last thing he wanted was more attention, more reasons for them to resent him. But he also recognized the political reality. His victory had transformed him from an embarrassment into an asset for the school administration. His discomfort was secondary to their desire for positive publicity. The morning passed in a blur of congratulations from teachers who had previously ignored him, and sudden interest from classmates who had never spoken to him before. In AP Physics, Dr. Reeves simply gave him a knowing smile and proceeded with her lesson on quantum mechanics, providing a brief island of normalcy in a sea of unwanted attention. At lunch, Alex hesitated in the cafeteria doorway, tray in hand. His usual isolated corner table beckoned with its familiar solitude. But before he could retreat to it, a voice called his name. "Alex, over here." Lily Chen, editor of the school newspaper and no relation despite the shared surname, waved from a table near the center of the room. She was surrounded by her usual circle: debate team members, student government representatives, the academic high achievers who formed Westbrook's intellectual elite. Alex had orbited their periphery for years, occasionally intersecting for group projects, but never truly included. Reluctantly, he made his way to their table, aware of the eyes following his progress. "Sit," Lily commanded, sliding over to make space. "I want to hear everything about MIT. Is it true you met Dr. Helena Wu? Her paper on quantum biological systems was revolutionary." Alex blinked in surprise. He hadn't expected anyone at Westbrook to know or care about Dr. Wu's work. "Yes, she was one of the judges," he confirmed, setting down his tray. "She asked some challenging questions about convergence's pattern recognition algorithms." "I've been reading about your project," Lily said, her eyes bright with genuine interest. "The cross-disciplinary approach is fascinating. Do you think it could be applied to social sciences as well? Like finding patterns between economic systems and cultural evolution?" The question was thoughtful, unexpected. As Alex began to explain how convergence could potentially analyze such correlations, he noticed others at the table leaning in, asking follow-up questions that displayed actual understanding. For the first time at Westbrook, he found himself engaged in a conversation where his intelligence was an asset rather than a liability. "You should come to the next Science Olympiad meeting," suggested Michael, the debate team captain. "We could use someone with your perspective on the research team." "And the robotics club," added Priya, a junior with ambitions toward mechanical engineering. "We're working on a machine learning project that could benefit from your expertise." Alex felt a complex mixture of emotions. Where had these invitations been for the past 3 years? Part of him wanted to reject them as opportunistic, interest that emerged only after external validation had marked him as worthy. But another part, the part that had connected so easily with May and the other finalists in Boston, recognized the value of engagement, regardless of its timing or motivation. "I'll think about it," he said non-committally. "I've got a lot going on with the MIT scholarship preparations." The afternoon assembly was as uncomfortable as Alex had anticipated. Principal Donovan's introduction painted him as a product of Westbrook's culture of excellence, rather than someone who had succeeded despite the school's indifference. The superintendent praised the district's commitment to STEM education, conveniently omitting that the advanced computer science courses Alex had needed were only available through his self-directed online studies after school hours. When it was Alex's turn to speak, he kept his remarks brief, thanking Dr. Reeves for her mentorship and acknowledging his parents' support. He said nothing about the isolation or bullying, made no reference to how Westbrook had failed him. What would be the point? The narrative had already been rewritten, his struggle retroactively transformed into a success story for the institution. As he returned to his seat amid applause, Alex caught sight of Jason in the audience, his expression dark. Unlike the others who had ignored Alex and now sought his attention, Jason had actively tormented him and now found his target elevated beyond reach. There was something dangerous in that reversal, a potential energy that made Alex uneasy. His instinct proved correct. As the assembly dispersed and students filtered back toward their classrooms, Jason intercepted him in a momentarily empty corridor. "Nice speech, genius," he said, his voice low and tight with suppressed anger. "Enjoying your little moment of fame?" Alex sighed, suddenly tired. "What do you want, Jason?" "I want you to remember something. All this..." He gestured vaguely toward the assembly hall. "Doesn't change anything. You're still the same freak you've always been. They're just using you now." There was a time when these words would have cut deep, would have confirmed Alex's worst fears about himself and his place in the world. But Boston had changed something fundamental in his perception. He had glimpsed another possibility, another community where his differences were valuable rather than threatening. "You know what, Jason? You're right about one thing. I am the same person. I was this person when you were shoving me into lockers and dumping my backpack in the toilet. I was this person when you and your friends made sure I had nowhere to sit at lunch for 3 years." Alex stepped closer, surprising himself with his own boldness. "The difference isn't me. It's everyone else. They see me differently now because someone outside this place recognized value in how my mind works. That says more about them than it does about me." He paused, studying Jason's face. The confusion, the anger, the uncertainty. "And it says a lot about you, too." For a moment, it seemed Jason might resort to his usual physical intimidation. His hands curled into fists, his posture tensed. But something in Alex's steady gaze, the absence of fear perhaps, made him hesitate. "Whatever," Jason finally muttered, backing away. "Enjoy it while it lasts." As he watched Jason retreat down the hallway, Alex felt no triumph, no satisfaction in the confrontation, only a weary recognition that some patterns couldn't be broken, some divides couldn't be bridged. Jason's hostility stemmed from something deeper than Alex's academic success, a fundamental insecurity that predated their interaction and would likely persist long after Alex left Westbrook behind. That evening, as Alex worked on refinements to convergence in his bedroom, his phone chimed with a video call request from May. They had been in regular contact since Boston, exchanging ideas about their projects and updates on their college preparations. "How was the triumphant return?" she asked when he answered, her face filling his screen. She was surrounded by what appeared to be packing boxes, her room in California in a state of transition. "Predictably awkward," Alex replied, describing the day's events. "The school's trying to take credit for my success. Classmates who never spoke to me are suddenly interested in being friends, and the guy who's been bullying me since freshman year is more resentful than ever." May nodded sympathetically. High school social dynamics are fascinating in their primitive simplicity. It's like watching primates establish dominance hierarchies, except with smartphones. Alex laughed, grateful for her perspective. "How about you? How's Berkeley handling their quantum computing celebrity?" "Oh, much the same. Suddenly, the physics department is my biggest fan, conveniently forgetting they rejected my independent study proposal last year. She held up a circuit board. But check this out. I've been working on a physical implementation of my algorithm. Early days, but the preliminary tests are promising. They spent the next hour discussing technical challenges and theoretical refinements, the conversation flowing easily between quantum computing principles and pattern recognition algorithms. Alex found himself wishing, not for the first time, that May attended Westbrook. Having just one person who understood both his work and his perspective would have made the past 3 years so much more bearable. "Have you heard from Carter or Elena?" he asked eventually. Elena's presenting her carbon capture system at a climate conference next month. And Carter's apparently been approached by 3 different venture capital firms interested in his nanomaterials. We should plan a reunion soon, maybe over winter break. The suggestion reminded Alex that he now had connections beyond Westbrook, a network of peers who shared his interests and respected his abilities. It was a novel feeling, this sense of belonging to a community that transcended geographic proximity. As the weeks passed, Alex settled into a new routine. He continued his schoolwork with the same diligence as before, but now divided his after-school hours between refining convergence and corresponding with researchers at MIT who had expressed interest in his work. Dr. Wu had introduced him to colleagues in the computer science department who were exploring similar cross-disciplinary approaches, and Alex found himself engaged in stimulating email exchanges about potential applications and theoretical limitations. At school, his status had stabilized into something like cautious respect. The initial flurry of attention had subsided, but he was no longer invisible or targeted. He occasionally joined the Science Olympiad meetings, finding that he could contribute meaningfully while maintaining boundaries around his time and energy. Jason kept his distance, their confrontation having established a wary détente. One afternoon in early December, Dr. Reeves asked him to stay after class. "I've been thinking about your transition to MIT," she said, when the other students had filed out. "You'll be well prepared academically, but I want to make sure you're considering the social adjustment as well." Alex nodded, appreciating her concern. "I think it will actually be easier than high school. The competition gave me a glimpse of what it's like to be around people who share my interests and don't find my enthusiasm weird or threatening." "That's likely true," Dr. Reeves agreed. "But MIT will also present challenges of a different sort. The academic pressure is intense, and you'll be surrounded by students who are all exceptional at their high schools. The imposter syndrome can be overwhelming." "Imposter syndrome," Alex repeated, unfamiliar with the term. "The feeling that you don't really belong, that you've somehow fooled everyone into thinking you're smarter than you actually are. That any moment, they'll discover you're a fraud." She smiled gently. "It's remarkably common among high achievers, especially those who've been isolated by their intelligence." The description resonated uncomfortably. Even after winning the competition, part of Alex still wondered if it had been a fluke, if the judges had seen something in convergence that wasn't really there. "How do you deal with it?" he asked. "You recognize it for what it is, a cognitive distortion, not reality. You remind yourself of objective evidence of your abilities. And most importantly, you talk about it with others who are experiencing the same thing." She leaned forward. "The isolation you felt at Westbrook, that's been real and painful. But don't let it convince you that you have to face everything alone. That's the trap." It was perhaps the most personal conversation they'd ever had, and Alex was touched by her investment in his well-being beyond academic achievement. Dr. Reeves had been more than a teacher. She had been a lifeline during his darkest periods at Westbrook, a reminder that his differences could be strengths in the right environment. "I'll remember that," he promised. As winter break approached, Alex received an unexpected email from Dr. Rothstein, the stern judge who had challenged him most intensely during the competition. "Mr. Chen," it began without preamble, "I've been following your refinements to convergence with interest. Your latest modifications to the cross-domain inference engine show promise, though the statistical validation methodology remains insufficiently rigorous. I would be willing to provide occasional guidance on this aspect of your work, should you wish to correspond. E. Rothstein, Ph.D." Coming from Rothstein, this terse message constituted effusive praise. Alex showed it to his parents that evening, trying to convey the significance of the offer. "He's one of the leading computational biologists in the world," he explained as his father squinted at the email. "His algorithms for protein folding prediction revolutionized drug discovery, and he never works with undergraduates, let alone high school students." His mother smiled, recognizing his excitement even if the technical details eluded her. "I'm glad you're finding your people, Alex. That's what we've always wanted for you." "My people," Alex repeated softly, the phrase settling into his consciousness. That night, as a winter storm blanketed Westbrook in snow, Alex stood at his bedroom window watching the transformation of the familiar landscape. The houses, the streets, the trees, all rendered new under the accumulating white. It struck him as an apt metaphor for his own experience. The same underlying reality, perceived differently after a significant event. His phone buzzed with a group text from May. "Winter reunion plan activated. Elena's parents have a vacation home in Vermont. Carter and I can fly into Boston on the 27th. You in?" Alex smiled, typing his reply. "Absolutely. Can't wait." As he turned back to his computer, where Convergence was processing a new data set on climate patterns correlated with migration behaviors across species, Alex felt a sense of anticipation that had nothing to do with algorithms or academic recognition. For the first time, he was looking forward to a social gathering, to reconnecting with people who understood both his work and himself. Westbrook had not changed. Its social hierarchies, its narrow definitions of success, its limited horizons remained as they had always been. But Alex had changed, or perhaps more accurately, his understanding of his place in the world had expanded. Convergence had begun as an algorithm to connect disparate domains of knowledge, but its greatest impact had been personal, helping him find connections of his own. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering everything in possibilities. At Elena's Vermont cabin, Alex reunited with May, Carter, and Elena. The sprawling mountain retreat became the birthplace of the Convergence Collective, as the four brilliant finalists formalized their collaboration. Over meals and fireside discussions, they established a framework: quarterly in-person meetings, weekly video calls, and a shared digital workspace to combine their diverse expertise toward solving global challenges. Their first project, using Alex's convergence algorithm to analyze climate adaptation strategies across species and apply those patterns to resilient community design. During snowshoe hikes and late-night work sessions, Alex shared news about potential medical research applications for convergence, while his friends reminded him that such responsibility shouldn't be shouldered alone. Their week balanced intellectual collaboration with genuine friendship. For Alex, who had always hidden parts of himself at Westbrook High, the experience was liberating. He could be fully present and authentic. As they departed, making plans for summer in the Outer Banks, Alex realized this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. His exceptional mind, once a source of isolation, had found its place in a network that amplified rather than diminished his unique perspective, perhaps the most valuable pattern convergence had helped him discover.